With the second pick in the 2020 NFL Draft, the Washington Redskins select Chase Young, defensive end, Ohio State.
But you know as they say, hail to the Redskins. Let's roll, man. Let's go.
Welcome, all my fellow Redskin brethren and sistren. I am your man and resident Redskins fan, Luke. Thank you for joining me here on the Redskins Report Live. Got a jam-packed show for you guys tonight. A lot of topics that I want to discuss. And I want your reaction to some of them as well. All of them, as a matter of fact. I can't wait to chop it up with you guys tonight. We're talking offensive tackles. Arguably the biggest question mark on this team is the left tackle position. We have one position pinned down. I know a lot of you don't love the guy that will be manning up the right tackle position in Morgan Moses, but we've got a guy for that position. He's fine. I know there are some holding penalties and there are some false starts and some things that make you a little apprehensive to just crown Morgan Moses the right tackle for this football team. But fact of the matter is, we've got a quality right tackle. The problem is not the right side, actually the left side. And so last year, it was funny, going into the year, we were really concerned with the left side of the line and what was going to happen. No Trent Williams. What are we going to do? We ultimately signed Donald Penn. He ended up being the starter. We didn't know what was going to happen at the left guard position. We were just bringing in the failed tackle from the Giants that went to Jacksonville, had a solid little cup of tea there. We bring him in here. We thought he was going to be horrible and that he was going to get someone killed at the guard position. And he turned out to have a very solid season. Can't remember his name. It'll come to me. But I think a lot of people eloquently put it, hey, it wasn't the left side of the line that was problematic last year. It was actually the right side of the line. And they were right. Brandon Sheriff got hurt again. Morgan Moses had his issues with penalties and things of that nature. And it was really the right side of the line that gave us issues last season. So hopefully we get a bounce back season from the right side. We really need the right side of the offensive line to be strong this season because of the question marks surrounding the left side. For the second consecutive year, we've got the same two questions going into camp about the left side of the offensive line. Who's going to be our left tackle? Who's going to be our left guard? And so right now, we don't know. We think we know the answers to that, but we're not quite sure. And so I think we're going to have to, Eric Flowers, thank you, grant a wish. Eric Flowers was the guy that ended up manning up the left tackle position. So at the end of the day, we got some questions to answer, and I think we're going to take a look at the tackle position tonight. More likely than not, we think we know who's going to make the team. We can't be quite sure about that. And I played you this snippet of Ron Rivera talking yesterday about the tackle position in particular, but just overall broad stroke, he painted over the entire roster by saying, look, we got a bunch of young guys and we want to play those young guys. And so that includes the tackle position. We don't really know what we have. We don't really want to sign anybody because we don't want to stunt the growth of our young guys. We want them to get a chance to play. And someone sent me a message on the YouTube video yesterday and said, look, whatever happened to the spirit of competition? Like, when are you ever okay with going into a season knowing that you're going to lose football games? And look, the answer to that is you're never content with losing football games. And that's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying the Redskins should just pack in and fold up the 2020 NFL season because I don't think they're going to be very good. I told you every single week I sit in front of my television at 1 o'clock thinking that the Redskins are going to somehow find a way to win the game no matter who the opponent is. No matter how daunting the task may be, I think we can win. Now, again, that may be me just being a fanatic, okay? Short for fan, short for fanatic. And honestly, probably a little crazy. And I know better, but that's just how I'm wired. I think we can win. However, I'm a realist as well. And I know that the Redskins aren't going to go 10-6 more likely than not. It's not out of the realm of possibility. As I've mentioned, the things that we need to go right bounce our way and we stay relatively healthy. And the defense is what we think it could be. It's vastly improved and everything kind of hits and we hit that inside straight. Who knows, but more likely than not, that's not what's going to happen this season. And I want to see this thing, and that's been a problem. And he said, well, what about going out and getting veterans to push these young guys and, having these veterans come in here and give us a chance to win? Well, that's the old model. That's the model that's failed here time after time after time after time. Aren't you tired of bringing in the Paul Richardsons of the world only to rob us of $40 million? Aren't you tired of bringing in those guys that don't pan out here? We did that under Bruce Allen every year, where we would go out, sign a bunch of low to middle costing veterans that would come in here and stink it up, that wouldn't produce much, and we'd lose football games in the process, never lose enough. Okay, never lose enough to get you that high draft pick like we got last year, which nets you really good football players, but lose just enough to put you right in the middle of the draft at 7-9, 8-8, or 7-8-1, and it's just not good enough. So let's try a different approach. Let's now let the young boys play. Let the young fellas get their feet wet because there's no replacing experience, okay? We could talk about mental reps. We could talk about Zoom conferences. We could talk about being able to see it, watch a bunch of film. There's no substituting. There's no replacing actual experience. Reps in the game when the bullets are live, when these things actually count. You can make mistakes in practice. That's what practice is for. But when it comes game time, we want to know who are the guys that are going to play mistake-free football. We want to know who are the guys that are going to give us a best chance to win. And if these guys can't get it done, then we need to find guys that can. But how are you going to find that out if you don't let them play? Okay? Just imagine last season if Terry McLaurin was buried on the bench because we had a bunch of veterans. We would have never found out that Terry McLaurin was the real deal and that we may have a true number one wide receiver on our team. If we would have decided that, hey, got to get these veterans out there and let them play, and all of a sudden Terry McLaurin's on the bench. That's why you got to let the youngins play. You got to find out what you have. I get it. No one likes losing, but let's be honest with ourselves. With the way the deck is stacked against us, it's probably not going to be the best outcome for us, in 2020. And that's okay. And but what we will find out is who's going to ride with us in the future. What guys we can ask to get inside the car and let's ride. And we're going to take this thing to the next level, starting with 2021. That's the way I view it. And so I appreciate the comment on the YouTube video, but I don't agree with that approach with the team that we have now. And I think the way that it's set up with all the youth that we have on this current roster, I think you have to take an opportunity to see what these guys can bring to the table. And the best way to figure it out at most positions is to just throw them into the fire and find out what you have. Let them play. Yeah, mistakes are going to be made. All right. But you're going to find out what you truly have before it's all said and done. So anyway, we're going to talk about the outward appearance of this Redskins roster, specifically the offense. We've had discussions on this show about how this Redskins offense is viewed on the outside, not by us. Okay, we have tunnel vision sometimes, and sometimes you got to come out of your bubble. And I know I'm guilty of this sometimes, even though, like I said, I take that wide view approach and wide lens approach, okay? I'm always looking at things from a macro perspective because I want to know what other people think. I'm very self-aware. And so I understand what the narrative on this Redskins team is, but I don't know if some of you understand. And I know some of you guys brought some of that to our attention by talking about some of the rankings, and the Redskins have the 32nd ranked wide receiver core in the league and this, that, and the third. I want you to hear from a very respected, and I know some of you don't. And we're going to do that a little bit later on in the show. But I'm not going to allow us to get off of the show tonight without playing that for you guys and getting your reaction to it. So giving us a little bit of the outward perception of this Redskins offense going into 2020. I'll just warn you before I play it a little bit later on in the show. I'll tease this now. It's a very sad description of what we think is a very young but talented offense. Man, did he absolutely lambast us or what? So we'll get to that a little bit later on in the show. But first and foremost, welcome. I feel like I'm being rude. Welcome to the show. Welcome to the Louie T Network. Welcome to the Redskins Report Live. I thank you guys for joining me. Going to be a fantastic show. Looking forward to chopping it up with you guys as we do every single Thursday here on the Louie T Network on the Redskins Report Live. I'm going to set the table very quickly, and then we'll get to some Super Chats. And then if there are no more Super Chats, then we'll start unveiling some of the different things that I want to get to tonight. And then we'll open up the floor for good. So with that being said, let's set the table, shall we? First and foremost, before we even set the table, if you haven't checked out the Louie T Network podcast, what are you waiting on? Make sure you're checking that out as well. Brand new episode dropped last week. I'm going to drop a brand new episode tomorrow. So stay abreast of what's going on the Louie T Network podcast. If you haven't already done so, make sure you subscribe to that on whatever platform you get your podcast from. That being said, like this video. Subscribe to the Louie T Network if you haven't already done so. That being said, all right, let's set the table. So, there's 3 ways to contact the show. Obviously, the first is Super Chats. Nothing supersedes Super Chats. That's why they're called Super Chats. So, Super Chats come first. We read those. We react to those. So, if you want to have your voice heard, you want to jump to the front of the line, Super Chats are the way to do that. Next is the phone lines. Speaking of which, I'll open that up. I know we haven't had a lot of calls lately, but phone lines still available. There's the number. If you call in, just a simple checklist of things you want to knock down before you call in. If we get to any calls, 1, make sure that your connection is strong. 2, make sure your volume is up. 3, make sure that you turn down whatever monitor you're watching this on, whatever device you're watching this on, turn it down so we don't hear the echo in the background. And 4, make sure that you're concise, know what you want to say, get straight to the point so that we can get in and out and then react to what you had to say. And then the last way is the comment section. Use the hashtag LouieTLive to have your comment read. If there are no Super Chats, if there are no phone calls, we then go to the comment section and read the comments. Hashtag LouieTLive. That being said, let's get to some Super Chats if we have any, and we do. Shout out to my man Rob U for getting the party started tonight. Rob U, what's good with you? Appreciate you, Rob U. My man Rob U writes, "What up, Lou? Wes Martin looked good down the stretch. I know it's premature, but could see a nice combo of Martin and Sadiq Charles as week 1 starters." Honestly speaking, I think that Wes Martin, it's his job to lose at left guard, to be brutally honest with you. I know they brought Wes Schweitzer in here to compete, but honestly, this is Wes Martin's job to lose. If they watch that same tape now, granted, Wes Martin played his best brand of football at right guard last season. If you recall, we already had, and I forgot his name, Eric Flowers at left guard. So Wes Martin, who we started seeing him in the preseason, at left guard because that's his natural position. That's what he played at Indiana. He didn't look all that great in the preseason at left guard. But then when he got in, and this just could have been about timing, you let a guy watch, observe, take reps in practice, catch up to the speed of the game, all of those things, the strength of the guys that he's blocking. He's no longer, blocking against Illinois, and he's no longer blocking against guys at Michigan State. All of a sudden the level of competition has heightened. And so maybe he was just better equipped to deal with the rigors of the NFL by the time he got in week 7 or 8, whenever it was that Sheriff went down. Whatever the case may be, when we saw Wes Martin, and it was probably a little bit later than that, like week 11, 12, by the time we got to Wes Martin back into the season, he looked ready. And he played really well. I agree with you, Rob. He played outstanding ball. And so much so that I feel like it's his job to lose, to be honest with you. He's got to show that he's not ready to deal with the left guard position and that Wes Schweitzer is better than him. And I don't think Wes Schweitzer is better. And I told you when we signed Wes Schweitzer that he was nothing more than a backup, a capable backup, but he's not a starter in this league. And the money that we signed Wes Schweitzer to isn't starters' money either. So I think they're trying to tell us that, hey, Wes, if you want the job, Wesley, it's yours, bruh. Just go and take it. And so I think he's going to get every opportunity to prove that he is the left guard of the future. And I'm hoping he takes the reins and doesn't look back. As far as Sadiq Charles is concerned, we're hoping he does the same thing with the left tackle position. I'd love to see the young boys start out on the left side of the line. A rookie and a second-year guy manning up the left side of the line and hoping that they are able to get it done. And that'd be something that we'd be watching all season long because we know how important the left side of the offensive line is. It's the blind side for a right-handed quarterback. And so we need those two guys to step up big, but we'll see what happens. But I think that's a combination that most Redskins fans want to see come week one. I mean, there may be a select few out there that don't want to see that, but for the most part, I think most Redskins fans want to see that combination as your left tackle and left guard, respectively, starting in week number one. Thank you for the comment, Rob. You got another super chat. This one from Brian Haynes. Thank you for the super chat, Brian Haynes. Greatly appreciate you. Brian writes, with the tackles going against Chase and Montez, do you think with that practice it would help them be better going up against elite pass rushers in the league? Absolutely. It can't hurt. You get better. Iron sharpens iron, okay? So if you want to be better, you got to play against the best. And that's how you elevate your game to the next level. You hear this all the time about why is it that LSU players and Clemson players and Ohio State players, why is it, and Alabama players, why is it that these guys get drafted so high in the draft every single year? Why is it so many players from 4 different schools coming off the board in such rapid succession and fashion? Why? Why is it that Ohio State has had the most first-round corners of any team in the league in the last decade? Why is that? It's really simple, all right? It's the fact that they're playing against elite talent every day in practice. That prepares them for the games. That prepares them for the next level because the guys that they're lining up against in practice, a lot of those guys are going to be playing on Sundays. So that makes you so much better. It helps your game go to the next level when the guy that you're playing against in practice is most likely the caliber of players you're going to see at the next level. So when you get that lower level corner on Saturday afternoon, when you're playing against Iowa or you're playing against Penn State, and they have a guy that's not going to the league, you're going to toast him. You're going to roast him. All right. When you're playing against Rutgers, they don't stand a chance because they don't have NFL talent. So when you're at Ohio State and you see Rutgers on the schedule, you're licking your chops because none of those guys would be starting or even making your football team at Ohio State. And so same thing could be said at LSU and all of these other schools. Iron sharpens iron. You're playing against the best. So absolutely, Sadiq Charles gets better. I mean, part of the reason I felt like he was so good in pass protection is look who he had to block every day in practice. K'Lavon Chason, a first-round pick to the Jacksonville Jaguars. One of the best edge rushers in this year's draft class. He had to block that guy in practice for the last couple of years when he was healthy. So iron sharpens iron, and you get better that way. And so I think that seeing Chase Young would do nothing but help. Seeing Ryan Kerrigan, seeing Montez Sweat, and all these guys bring different things to the table. Montez Sweat with this ridiculous length, all right? That's something different that you don't get necessarily from Chase Young, that you don't get from Ryan Kerrigan. Kerrigan with brute force and power. That's a different that's a different look, And then Chase Young with the complete package of speed, quickness, dynamic power and ability. You get all of that in one package and you're seeing these guys in waves. It's going to make you better, all right? And also you get tips from guys too. You make a mistake after the rep, you come over and you say, hey man, how were you able to beat me on the inside there? And he comes and he tells you, look, you give off a tell pre-snap, when I know it's a pass, is I look at your feet and your outside foot is turned to the outside. So I already know on run plays, your outside foot is straight. But on passing downs, your outside foot is turned to the outside. So I already got to tell right there that it's a pass play and I can bend my ears back and come after the quarterback. Now it's just a matter of how do I want to attack you? And it's little things like that, little nuances that guys are able to clean up in practice when you're going up against elite rushers because they see everything. So, yes, I believe that to be the case, Brian, and I appreciate your super chat. Got another super chat. This one is from my man, JP, John Perez. Thank you for the super chat, JP. Greatly appreciate it. My man, JP, writes, Sadiq Charles definitely has potential to be a good, maybe great tackle in this league. Whether he starts year one still remains to be seen, though. And that's the thing that I was saying was, I'm not sure if he was ready or not. You know, when I gave you my assessment of him, when I broke him down, I said, you know, it'd be great if we had an apprenticeship program for him. And he could be an understudy and someone could have been here. But I don't necessarily want to go out and get a guy. You know, let's say Trent would have been here for one more year. That would have been the perfect ideal situation, honestly speaking. But I think they drafted Sadiq Charles because Trent wasn't going to be here. Had Trent remained here, they probably don't pull the trigger on Sadiq Charles. I could be wrong. You know, maybe they do pull the trigger on him either way because they don't expect Trent to be here long term. But that would have been the perfect situation. Learn from a future potential Hall of Famer. See what this guy does to make him great. Study him. Learn from him. The subtleties, the nuances, the film study, the weight room work. And then you take that and apply it once you get your opportunity. That would have been great. But I don't want to just bring in some Joe Schmo off the street and have him follow. It's the reason that guy's on the street right now. If you're not going to have a guy like a Jason Peters, that'd be the only guy that I would consider bringing in at this point if you didn't think he could get it done. That'd be the only guy that I would really consider bringing in. All these other guys that are out there, I don't necessarily want Sadiq Charles learning from those guys necessarily. So to be honest with you, I at this point, when we first drafted him, I wanted someone else to be here so that he could learn from them. Now I'm at the point where I just want him to play. Baptism by fire. Yeah, there will be some mistakes made. There will be some growing pains. But if he's any good, we'll know. We'll know after 1 year if Sadiq Charles can do it or not. You know, and so we'll find out very quickly. We generally do at the tackle position. Some positions, you may start off a little slow and maybe your first year wasn't a very good year. All right, and maybe year two wasn't that great either, but maybe the third year is when the light comes on. That's generally not how it goes with the tackle position. Usually, if you're any good, we find that out pretty quickly, okay? Usually in your first season, like quarterback is not one of those positions that you just go off for the first year and say, man, he was terrible last year. He can't do this, you know. But, you know, if you see some glimpses and you know, maybe there was this reason and that reason, and you find reasons why a guy didn't succeed as a quarterback because it's such a hard position. Tackle, not so much. It's not rocket science out there, all right? Stop the guy in front of you from getting to the quarterback. Stop the guy in front of you from getting to the running back and do your job. It's not really that hard. There are different schemes, but for the most part, it's all the same, you know? So we will find out if he's really good or not. And I think we'll find out pretty quickly what we have. So it still remains to be seen if he'll be a year one starter. You're right about that. No one's made any definitive statements at the left tackle position yet. And there have been ample opportunities for Scott Turner or Ron Rivera or someone to step up to the mic and say, yeah, Sadiq's going to have every chance to start. They haven't said that. So essentially what they said is we don't know. And nobody can know at this point because they haven't been able to put hands on any of these players. Not a single one. So we'll see what happens. Thank you for the super chat, though, JP. Got another one from Rob U. Double up. From Rob U. Thank you for doubling up. Greatly appreciate you, Rob U. My man Rob U writes, Lou, Chase Rouillet has quietly been a mainstay at center since getting here. does he take the next step this year, and what's his asking price to re-sign? Honestly, it's really going to depend on what they value him at, because remember how we felt about the last center we had, and I didn't know if anybody else, and I've always told you guys this, somebody's always eyeballing your stuff. You may not think that no one else wants your stuff, but this is why I always laugh when people think that our players are so bad. And there were times where we had guys on our roster that didn't belong in the league. All right, there have been times that we've had guys on our roster that did not belong in this league. However, I always laugh when people say, hey, offer this guy this contract because no one else wants him. And I'm like, I wouldn't say that if I were you, because someone else's situation out there is usually worse than yours. And so while you may think that this guy is borderline trash, someone else is looking at that guy like a treasure. And that happened to us a couple of off seasons ago when the Jets took our center and they took Jamison Crowder from us. And we were fine with that because Chase Rouillet was up and coming and we liked what he did for us, and we didn't want to pay him the money that, we felt like he could get on the market, knock yourself out. And it proved to be the right move because like 2 years into that contract, the Jets cut him loose and he's, kind of been trying to find his way in the league, and that's cool. But Chase Rouillet has, like you said, a mainstay on this offensive line. He's done Ullman-like work. He's got versatility to play both guard spots and center. And I think what it's going to boil down to is how much they value Chase Rouillet. And we're going to find that out this season because, again, what he's done in the past is cool, but it doesn't really matter anymore. They don't care about what he's done the first couple of years in his career. What they care about is what he can do for this new regime moving forward. And if he plays well, if he stays healthy, and he shows the kind of consistency that he's shown us over the first 3 years of his career, I think he's the kind of guy that could command a very solid contract. Not going to be top of the market value, but I think you're looking at a 4-year, $39-40 million contract, 10 years per. Hell, we just saw our guard get $10 million per. All right, so it wouldn't shock me if Chase Rouillet was able to get a 4-year, $32 million is probably where they want to pay him, somewhere in that $8 million range. It'd be great if you could get him for a, 4-year, $30 million contract, something like that. But, with the way that these numbers are inflating, and I think the salary cap may actually come down next year. So that remains to be seen because of all of the financial ramifications of 19 this year. We could see a situation where the salary cap number is reduced next season. So guys may not be getting paid as much as they have been in the past, but I could see him getting a 4 or a 5-year deal, $35-40 million, just depending on the length of the contract. But $8 million is right around $8 to $10 million is what I think he would command on the open market. And I think he would be a guy that I would love to see stay here. Again, when you're building a young nucleus, guys like Chase Rouillet are kind of cogs in that machine. They're like glue guys. You need to keep those guys on board. And if he plays the kind of consistent ball that we've seen him play over the life of his career to this point, and he stays healthy, that's been the biggest thing with Chase Rouillet, is he stayed healthy. Unlike the rest of the guys on the offensive line outside of Morgan Moses, who's pretty much been available every single week. You look around at the other positions, left guard, left tackle, right guard. We've had a revolving door at those positions. Guys in and out. We haven't had the consistency that we'd like to. The only two positions that have pretty much been mainstays are right tackle and center. And if he can stay healthy for a full 16-game slate like he's done the previous 2 years, then I think that's a guy you got to keep. And I think he's a really solid football player. Nothing flashy, nothing great, but really, really solid. So I'm with you, Rob. Quietly, he's been a mainstay on this offensive line, and I think he's a guy that if he plays well again this upcoming season, I think he'll be back moving forward. Thank you for the super chat. Got another super chat. This one from Ivan Zalea. Thank you for the super chat, Ivan Zalea. Greatly appreciate you, Ivan. My man Ivan writes, "What up, Lou, a.k.a. Josh Doxson, Senior?" I'm glad you threw the senior at the end. He says, "LOL. Love your show, man. Keep up the good work. How would you grade our offseason this year, and what other team outside of the Redskins do you think is a sleeper?" There's a bunch of sleepers in this league every year, and I talk about this, and that's why you can't dismiss the Redskins as a team that doesn't have a chance, because every year we see 4 new playoff teams that didn't make the playoffs a season ago go in. 2 usually from at least both conferences. Well, guess what? Now there's a new playoff format this year, in case you aren't aware, that each conference will have 7 playoff teams and not 6. So there's an additional team in each conference. So, that heightens the Redskins' chances of potentially sneaking in the back door at 8-8 if they can get that high in the win total. So we'll see what happens. But I would grade our offseason as a B- or a C+. I mean, nothing flashy. Solid signings, but a bunch of guys that are on essentially short-term prove-it deals. So, nothing to really get excited about. I mean, if you strip away the players that we've signed and you just focus on the fact that we got rid of Bruce Allen and we hired Ron Rivera, that's an A++ in itself. All right. But then when you add in the moves that we've made, losing Trent Williams, having to trade Quentin Dunbar, which actually turned out to be a positive, but at the time didn't think we got enough value. I still don't think we got enough value, but it is what it is, and I'm glad he's not on this team after what transpired, whether he's guilty or not. It's just the perception of the situation. And moving on from some guys and then the guys that we added, it may end up being addition by subtraction. When you move on from Amante and Nicholson, and guys like that don't want to be here, that you don't think are a part of your culture moving forward. But, not a lot of names that get you excited. And even the guys that they signed that you think may be able to help us into the future, I'm not as high on some of those guys. And we'll see. That's why you sign them to these short-term deals, because if they don't prove to be what you think they can be, you move on from them. But for me, just the fact that Bruce is no longer here, the Prince of Darkness has left the building, and you bring in a Ron Rivera, and he's given us something that we haven't had for the last 5 years, which is hope. You can't really go wrong there. So at best, it's a B- for me. At worst, it's a C+. But when you talk about teams in this league and the potential to be sleepers, I think you've got one in this division. Look, I'm not a Daniel Jones fan. All right, I'm really not. But if he takes the next step, first of all, I'm so impressed with the Giants' new head coach, Joe Judge. He just strikes me as a guy that gets it. And he's been around some of the best in the business. He's been around Nick Saban for a number of years as his special teams coordinator. He's been around Bill Belichick as his special teams coordinator. And this is a guy that when he speaks in a definite tone. And he's so reassuring. I get the sense that if he is legit, they could see a massive turnaround sooner rather than later in New York, because I think there is some talent on that roster. But I will say this, I don't believe in their offense. I don't think there's enough offensive talent on that football team. I do think, however, the defense has gotten exponentially better, but that still remains to be seen. All right, so the Giants could be one. Although I don't think they're going to make much noise, but I would not be shocked if the Giants were to make some noise this year and surprise some people. But there are 2 teams in particular for me that I think are going to have a big 2020. And I know one of them is the chic pick. That's the pick that everybody's going with. That's the Denver Broncos. You know how I feel about Drew Locke. He was my guy in the 2018 NFL draft in terms of quarterbacks. He showed some promise at the end of the 2019 season when he finally got a chance to start. And they gave him every bit of weaponry you could imagine to turn that offense from good to great in terms of on paper with the talent and the speed. Now, I think Vic Fangio is going to have that defense buzzing. I thought the defense was actually pretty good last year. They did lose a big piece in in Harris Jr., but outside of that, I think that defense is going to be good. I look for the Denver Broncos to take a massive step. And I was against the grain last year on Cleveland. I thought the Browns were going to stink last year when everybody else was talking about AFC Championship for the Browns. I actually think this is the year the Browns take that monumental step in the right direction. They're going to be competitive. Look out for the Arizona Cardinals, too. I think that roster is loaded with talent. They add a guy like Nuke Hopkins, and all of a sudden, they look dangerous out there in the West. And this is a team that nobody, just like the Redskins, nobody's giving them a chance. But if you look at their roster, they're pretty damn talented. And if Joe Burrow is what I think he can be year one, and it's A.J. Green is back like cooked crack, look out for the Cincinnati Bengals. I'm not saying. I'm just saying. So there are my sleepers. Just a couple of quick ones. There are more, but those are the ones that I'll give out really quickly. Thank you for the super chat, Ivan Zalea. Got another super chat. This one from my man Billy Ampifo. My man Billy Amp, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Billy Amp writes, I'm back, Louie. Good to have you back, man. Missed you, dog. He says, what's good? PFF has us picking top 5 in the draft next year and either getting Penei Sewell, which I don't mind, or Lawrence/Fields. If we're picking top 5, that probably means that Dewayne Haskins didn't play very well and that the team may have soured on him. And if that happens, you probably have seen Allen at some point at the end of the season. And if that happens, then yeah, you'll be picking top 5 and you'll probably be selecting a quarterback with that pick. That being said, there are other instances where you end up with a top 5 pick and Dewayne Haskins isn't to blame. And they're not looking for a quarterback and instead going with a different position. But we're not picking top 5, dude. If we play 16 games and we stay relatively healthy at all the right positions, we're not picking top 5. We're not going to be a good team. We're not going to be the worst team, okay? Like, we were one of the worst teams in football last year, okay? Our record bears that out. The fact that we held the second pick in the draft bared that out. At the end of the day, we haven't been that bad, and we've been bad, and we haven't been that bad many times. And so I think when it's all said and done, we're going to look up. The Redskins are going to be back where we were in the Jay Gruden era, which is somewhere between 13 and 17, making a selection. And, you know, I'll be fine with that. That means we won 6 or 7 games. And we were in the race, the playoff race, down the stretch, and we just missed out. Or we made a hard charge at the end of the season after starting off the season slow. Whatever the case may be, we'll be trending in the right direction. And so I don't see us with the top 5 pick, but that is a great segue to something that I want to play for you guys. I think that comment by Billy Amp is the perfect segue to the outside perception, the outward perception of the Redskins offense. And if you listen to people talk about the Redskins offense, it's kind of a microcosm of how people feel about this Redskins team overall. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to play you a quick clip, a snippet from a podcast that I listen to very often. It's called the Kevin Sheehan Show podcast. And he had a guy that I know not all Redskins fans love on his show in Jason La Canfora. But say what you want about Jason La Canfora, he's plugged into the league. All right. He is one of the most knowledgeable guys in league circles. He's got a lot of contacts. He talks to a lot of people. He's in the know. All right. And he has a really good pulse of how people view teams on the outside looking in. And so listen to what he had to say about the Redskins offense going into the 2020 season. Take a listen. All right. Tell me guys what you think about this.
Do they have the right quarterback in Dwayne Haskins?
I don't think it's going to be. I don't think anybody could say they know until 2021 because I just don't know what they've given him that you could say is giving him, like, what's in place that will give him a fair shot. I don't know what that is. I mean, we're in the middle of this pandemic. He can't be around the facility. They have changed everything up again, right? He's on his third coach already. The offensive talent, and I'm putting talent in air quotes, is probably the worst in the league. You know, even the offensive line, I have major reservations about. In the run game, I mean, this Adrian Peterson thing, I mean, come on, man. Like, that ship has sailed. Darius Geis is always hurt. I mean, I don't know what he can depend on. Like, I don't know. I mean, other than his right guard, I don't know what he goes to battle, and one receiver.
Yeah.
I don't know. You know what I mean? I don't know what you go into any game planning meeting feeling good about. Like, oh, we're going to feature this guy. Really? Who are you going to feature besides Terry? Like, who? I dare you. Try.
So that was pretty damning, okay? That was pretty morbid. I mean, when you hear that, that's what people think of us. That's what people think about our roster, all right? That's what people think of our wide receiver group. So when you read a list that has the Redskins rated 32nd of 32 teams in terms of their wide receiving core, and we just say that it's young, they're not looking at youth. They just think that we stink, okay? When you talk about our offense, and look, he made some very valid points, all right? The offensive line, we don't know. We don't know if we're going to be any good up front. Dewayne Haskins could be running for his life for all we know. Our left side of our line could be a catastrophic disaster, or it could be great. We could have the makings of a dominant left side for all we know. We don't know. All right? Neither does Jason Locke. But what he is expressing is the opinion of people outside of this market, people that aren't Redskins fans, that are looking from afar. They think that we stink, that we're going to be one of the worst offenses yet again in the league. Now, in his defense, he did go on to say, after Kevin preferenced a question by saying, look, if the Redskins did what the Broncos did for Drew Locke, and that's get him all the weaponry that he needs, could Dwayne Haskins be a franchise quarterback? Do you believe in Dwayne Haskins? He said, yes, absolutely. The guy threw 50 touchdowns at Ohio State playing big-time college football. If you got him the weapons, he could thrive, but he doesn't have that. He said that what we did this offseason was next to nothing. So essentially what he said about the Gandhi man, Antonio Gandy-Golden and Antonio Gibson, and adding those guys was nothing. Okay, those guys mean absolutely nothing to him. All right, he doesn't see Adrian Peterson as a viable threat in the backfield anymore. Doesn't see it. Doesn't think that. As a matter of fact, he said that essentially that's a joke. All right, that ship has sailed. Darius Geis is always hurt, so he's written him off, and he's not thinking about anybody else on this football team outside of Terry McLaurin and our right guard Brandon Sheriff. He essentially said, who else are you game planning for? And so he essentially dismissed our entire offense is what he did. And he's not alone in that. That's how we're perceived on the outside, okay? So keep that in your brain. So when you hear a guy like Billy Amp bring up that Pro Football Focus has us drafting 5th overall next year, it's not because they're just pulling out a number out of a hat. Okay, Redskins, you're 5th. We pulled your name out of the hat. No! Pro Football Focus is thinking like Jason Locke that we stink, that we don't have any talent. So what the Redskins have to do is prove everybody wrong. What they're saying is, you got an unknown commodity as an offensive coordinator. You've got an unknown a bunch of guys at receiver. You've got an old running back that can't do it anymore. You've got an injury-prone running back behind him. You've got a young quarterback that hasn't proven himself and looked pretty damn bad early in the season, showed some promise late, but really don't have anything around him. So what do you expect him to do? And oh, by the way, the offensive line you're putting in front of him, at best, it's going to be patchwork and probably not very good. That's essentially what he just said. I'm summing it up in about 30 seconds. All right. That's what everyone's perceiving us to be, just so you know. So don't be surprised when you see us being ranked 32nd in some offensive category, or our group of this is ranked dead last in the league, or Pro Football Focus has us rated, number this, or has us drafting here, or this site has us drafting here next year and taking this player. Everyone's projecting the Redskins to be among the worst in the league. We are bottom feeders right now, okay? So I'm hoping that all the guys on the inside are taking all of this in. All right, I hope they understand what they're being viewed as right now. At the end of the day, none of this matters. However, I'm just giving you some perspective from the outside because we think that we've got talented receivers. They're just young. All right, that's what we're saying. On the outside, they're saying, no, your receivers aren't any good. They're young and they're terrible. Okay, you think they're young and good. We think they're young and terrible, except for Terry McLaurin. Okay, the rest of those guys, they're bums. That's what they're essentially saying. So thank you for the super chat, Billy Amp. That was a great segue to me playing that snippet there that I thought was very, very interesting. Got another super chat from Chris Z. My man, Chris Zacharias. Thank you for the super chat, Chris. Greatly appreciate you. My man, Chris writes, let them play. Sounds logical to me. HTTR. Sounds good to me as well. Let the young boys play. I love it. All right, want more of it. Thank you for the super chat, Chris Z. My man JP, double up, doubling up. Welcome back, JP. Once again, welcome back, Billy Amp. Appreciate you guys for joining and blessing the show. My man JP, doubling up, writes, back like cook crack after missing last week's show. This line is really going to have to be at their best if they want to keep Haskins protected. Absolutely. And that's the big thing that we all don't know. That's the real question mark. It's really the thing that you can't account for right now. If we were doing a scientific experiment, right now the offensive line, and specifically the left side of the line, would be your independent variable. And Dewayne Haskins would be your dependent variable. We really don't know what we're getting on the line. So that's your independent variable. We'd have to test that out. And Dewayne's play is probably going to be closely connected to what happens with that independent variable. So he's dependent upon that offensive line. And the only control, if you listen to Jason Locke Canfora, the only control in this experiment is Terry McLaurin or the only controls are Terry McLaurin and Brandon Sheriff. Those are the only controls that you have on the offensive side of the football. The rest of them are liabilities, and we could write a hypothesis, but we'd have to test it to see what happens. So it's going to be rather interesting to see what happens on this offensive line because, again, I don't care how good we feel about Dewayne. I don't care how much weight he's lost and how much more spry he is. He may have to be if this offensive line isn't very good because he's going to be running around for his life. But as we saw last year, if he's not able to escape, he can get injured. We saw that last season, and we don't want to see that again. So we need the offensive line to step up. And if we have some liabilities on that left side, then what you have to ultimately do is you have to alter your game plan. All of a sudden now you've got jet protection. Instead of 5-man protections, to block 4, now you've got to keep a 6th guy in to help Chip on the outside as he's going out for his pass route or to help the guard inside. You're going to have to do different things. You maybe keep the tight end in. You lose 20% of your eligibles when you got to keep a guy in the block, especially if they're not blitzing. It makes it that much more tougher to complete a pass. So hopefully those issues don't crop up and we get solid play out of our left side. And hell, the right side too. Remember, the right side struggled at times last year. We need good play from the entire offensive line, not just the left side, which we focused on way too much last season. Last offseason going into the regular season. We focused on the left side of the offensive line the entire preseason. Oh my God, they're going to get somebody killed. And it turned out to be the right side of the line that was compromised much of the time last season. So we need consistent play across the board up front. And we're hoping that we get that indeed. Moving on. Rob U, tripling up. Appreciate you, Rob U. As always, thank you for the super chat. My man, Rob U, thank you for tripling up. Writes, Lou, this team actually has speed for a change. It does. And, that's refreshing. And it has speed on both sides of the ball, which we haven't been able to say for quite some time. The last time we've had credible speed on the roster offensively, you'd have to go back to when Deshaun Jackson was a part of this team. So 2016 was the last time with Pierre Garçon, Deshaun Jackson, Jordan Reed. I think Vernon Davis might have been a part of that team by then. If not, 2017 was his first season. I think Vernon Davis was here by 2016. And so that's probably the last time we had legitimate speed on this football team, back in 2016, that last year with Deshaun, Pierre, and company on the offensive side. Now, the defensive side, man, we've lacked speed for ages. We've been in the dark ages in terms of speed on the defensive side of the football. I've been crying for speed on the defensive side of the football for God knows how long. I can't even remember the last time. You probably got to go back to Joe Gibbs 2.0, the last time we had legitimate speed on the defensive side at all three levels. I think you're probably talking about back in 07 was the last time we had legitimate speed with Marcus Washington and Sean Taylor and Sean Springs and, all of those guys. You probably got to go all the way back to 07 is the last time we had legitimate speed on defense. And it's not very often. And we've had some guys that have been athletic, but they weren't speed merchants. Keenan Robinson was athletic at the linebacker position, but he was far from fast. He was a 4.7 guy. Let's not act like Keenan Robinson was running a 4.55 or something like that. Keenan Robinson was a 4.7 linebacker. So we've lacked speed at linebacker. We've lacked speed up front along the defensive line. That's why guys like Dak Prescott and Carson Wentz have dug in our ass for years. The reason why mobile quarterbacks used to come into FedEx routinely and beat us is because we didn't have the athleticism to run with mobile quarterbacks. They would extend plays. They would leave the pocket, pick up yards with their legs. We have struggled for years trying to contain the mobile quarterback. Now we have legitimate speed on all three levels. And I love the fact that on this entire team, we've gotten faster. And that's going to bode well because speed kills in this league, which is why you see teams adding inordinate amounts of speed on both sides of the football. That's why you're seeing linebackers that are 215 pounds that are 4.4 guys being drafted. Why? Because you got to be able to match up with that guy in the slot that's running a 4.39. Or you got to be able to match up with that tight end that's coming into the league that's a 4.5, 240 guy. There's speed everywhere on the football field. In case you forgot, it's even speed at the quarterback position. Go ask the Ravens what they're doing over there with Lamar Jackson. There's speed everywhere now. All right? Not just the running back position, not just wide receiver, not just tight end. Speed is everywhere. All right? And so you've got to be able to match it. And it feels good. We're not there yet. We still got to add a lot more speed. All right? We're still deficient on offense in terms of speed. We've got some speed, but we could use more speed. You can never have enough. I don't think we have any speed at tight end right now. Theoretically speaking. All right? I don't think we have much speed at the tight end position. I'd like to upgrade that. I'd like to add a guy that can run with some wheels at the tight end position. We've got a long way to go on the offensive side of the football. All right? Running back position, if you take Gibson out of the mix, I don't know, and I talked about this. I didn't talk about this. I wanted to talk about this last week, and I think I got away from it. But I think I did talk about this, but I'll reiterate it here. J.P. Finley put out his list of, his first 53-man roster projections, and he had 4 running backs making the team. And, one of those guys was not the ex-Stanford product. All right. I think we all assume there's no way he's getting cut. There's no way Bryce Love's getting cut. No way. He's got to be here, right? Well, this regime did not draft Bryce Love. They have no ties to him. None. And if you look at the situation, J.D. McKissick, and I told you guys this a couple weeks back when we talked about the running backs. J.D. McKissic is making his football team. If he stays healthy, he's going to make this football team because what they're going to do with Antonio Gibson is they're going to move this guy all around the field. And they're going to have, and this was the thing, and I talked about this a couple of weeks ago. This is the thing that Jay Gruden failed to do when he was here. Because every week, he would put in a specific package for Jordan Reed. And every week, he'd have about 8 to 10 plays that he wanted to get to with Jordan Reed that were going to create some severe mismatches and win. And then Jordan Reed would end up hurt, and he'd have to scrap it. He didn't have a legitimate backup option to Jordan Reed because Vernon Davis couldn't do the same things that Jordan Reed could do. Vernon Davis was faster than Jordan Reed, but he wasn't quick like Jordan Reed. He couldn't do the things, get in and out of breaks, break a dude off like Jordan Reed. And so he'd have to scrap all of those plays that he'd been working on all week. If you keep J.D. McKissic, you don't have to get rid of anything that you're doing with Antonio Gibson. If you work all week on these 12 plays that you want to try to get in with Antonio Gibson and he goes down first quarter, third play of the game, he goes down. You don't have to throw out those 12 plays you were working on because J.D. McKissic can run every single one of them. All right. So he's making this football team. There's not another guy on this team that can run the stuff that they're going to do with Antonio Gibson other than J.D. McKissic. He's making his team. And if they're only going with 4 backs, Bryce Love, because if you're thinking you got Peterson and then you got a backup to Peterson, which is Geis, or you got it vice versa. Geis is your starter. Peterson is his backup. And then you look at the 2 guys that are duplicates of each other in Gibson and McKissic. Those guys have got to be on the team. If there's only 4, maybe Bryce Love is on the outside looking in. And I said all of that to say this coming full circle. We don't have a ton of speed at running back. If you take McKissic and Gibson out of the equation, you're average at best speed-wise at the running back position. So we need to add more speed on this team, but we're a lot faster than we've been in the last, 5 years or so. Since 2016, again, that's the last time we had legitimate speed on the offensive side of the football. And now you look at the defensive side, you probably got to go back a full decade plus before you can get to a Redskins defense that actually featured some guys that could run. So it feels good, but we still got a ways to go in terms of the speed department. But it's good to know that we're finally catching up with the rest of the league. We've been behind for so long. It's like we've been playing with one hand tied behind our back. And I always wanted to know, when are we going to get a couple of the jokers out of the deck? All right, when are we going to get a couple of aces, man? Damn, it's cool to have, a couple of jacks and a queen, but hell, those aren't going to beat any kings or aces. It won't beat any deuces. Damn sure isn't beating any jokers. When are we going to get our hands on a couple of aces? Maybe a joker or 2. It'd be nice. We're finally starting to get our hands on some big time cards that we can slap down with a little bit of emphasis and know, hey, this book is ours, all right, to make a Spades reference. So I feel real good about that. Thank you for the super chat, Rob U. Chris Zacharias, doubling up, double up, Thank you for the super chat, Chris Z. Thank you for doubling up. My man Chris Z writes, School of Hard Knocks. Let the young guys play. Absolutely, all right. Baptism by fire. You don't know what you've got until you let them hit the field. You got to see what these guys can produce for you. All right. And if the moment's too big for them, maybe they're not the right guy. Because generally in this league, and like I said, there's exceptions to every rule, and every guy can't be measured on the same scale. Because some guys get it immediately, other guys don't. But you know what? If a guy comes in and shows you right away, then you know what you got. And if a guy doesn't, that doesn't mean you get rid of him. That just means maybe he isn't ready to play right now. And that's okay too, But I just want to know. Let me know something. And the only way you find that out is if you let these guys play. I'm with you. Got another super chat. This one from Barrett Downey, my man BD. Thank you for the super chat, BD. Greatly appreciate you, BD, as always, who writes, I'm with you, Lou. I really don't want to deal with a bunch of vets. I just want the kids to play so they can improve instead of parked on the beach. HTTR. Absolutely. I mean, at the end of the day, we've went that route before with the veterans, and we haven't gotten it done. And so what we're doing now is we've got a youth movement in Washington, and the only way to find out, to see if the youth can actually play, is to let them play. And we're going to find out. I told you, there's nothing, and I'll kind of make this comparison. I'm a Memphis Grizzlies fan in the NBA. And you know what was so fun and refreshing about this past season, even though we didn't get the completion of the season, maybe, with the NBA agreeing to start back at the end of July, we may get a conclusion to the season. I'm not happy about how things turned out with that, but it doesn't matter. You know what was so refreshing about watching my Grizzlies this year is that we were so young. We called it the next gen Grizz, okay? Next generation Grizz, because they were so young. Well, a bunch of young 20-somethings running around on the court. They don't know what the hell they're doing. They're just out having fun, man. And it was refreshing because I was watching the young boys play. And I had the last 2 coaches that the Grizzlies had, or 3 really, that we had before the one we have now. They refused to let the young boys play. We would draft a guy in the first round and he wouldn't see the light of day. He'd be parked on the bench behind a bunch of veterans. And that was cool. But at the same time, how do we know what that guy can do if you're not giving him any minutes? How are we supposed to know if this guy can play at an NBA level if you're not giving him any clock? And so now I'm watching these Grizzlies grow before my eyes because they're playing. For better or for worse, they're in the game, and sometimes it would be maddening. There'd be a bunch of turnovers and a bunch of mistakes, and they get bogged down, and because they want to get out and run, and they want to have fun, and sometimes they make a bunch of mistakes in that process, and you pull your hair out like, dude, you can't do that. That's how you lose ball games. But guess what? They learned from those mistakes. And down the season, further as we got into the season, you started to see them learn from those mistakes and started to make the right plays in critical situations. And instead of losing a game by 4, we would win a game by 3. And you say, you know what? This team is coming of age. Why? Because they let the young boys play. Let them play. And so, look, it may not prove to be the best thing for wins and losses in 2020. I understand that there's a sacrifice that comes when you play the young boys. And it's okay. You know why? Because I know that the fruit that we bear at the end of this thing is going to be worth it. When I take a bite out of that fruit that's going to be really juicy, juice dripping down my cheek, you know what I'm going to say? Man, it was well worth the wait. All right. It was well worth the wait to be able to watch them play and have to suffer through some tough, excruciating losses that maybe if you had a veteran-laden team, maybe you pull it out. Maybe you don't. But because we watched the young boys play and watched them come of age right before our very eyes, we watched them make the mistakes. We watched them learn and grow. Now they're ready to take that next step. The mistakes that they were making as young pups, wet behind the ears, breath smelling like Similac, they're no longer making those mistakes. And so because of that, I'm excited to see the young boys play. Let them play. Let them play. And then once we find out what we have, because not all of these young boys are going to prove to be ready to go for the show. All right. Sometimes the spotlight and the stage is a little bit too big and a little bit too bright for some of these young boys. And that's okay. Like I said, some of these guys are going to sink and some of them are going to swim. Just because they sink doesn't mean they don't know how to swim. Just means that they may have a 5-pound anvil attached to their ankle at the time. And maybe it takes them a little time to unfree themselves from that shackle and then they come back up to the surface. It may take them a little bit of time, but we're on a journey and we're on a path. And you need the guys that are ready to go right now. And so you find out who those guys are, because I'm telling you right now, I'm not going to have the same tone that I have right now going into the 2021 season. I'm not going to be telling you guys, hey, I'm okay with 6 or 7 wins. After seeing the team this year, for better or for worse, especially if Dewayne plays well, forget about the record. If Dewayne plays well and I feel good about some of the talent around him on both sides of the football, I'm talking crazy next year. I'm talking 10, 11 wins. All right. And the only way you get to talk crazy and reckless like that is if you know what you have. The only way you know what you have is if you let the young boys play. You find out what you got so I can say, all right, look, we don't have this, this, and this. This is why we need to add that in free agency. And that's when you start to learn your roster and what you have and what you don't have. I've told you guys this numerous times. I'll continue to beat this into your skull until you're regurgitating this. You build your team through the draft, okay? That's where you build the foundation and core of your football team. It's through the draft. You supplement your roster, meaning you add to pieces, you add to parts of your roster that are lacking through free agency, okay? So what you find out by playing the young boys is what you need to add in free agency, all right? Whoa, we don't have this right here. We don't have that, all right? We might be able to get one in the draft, but if we're trying to win now, we need a guy that we can count on, a guy that's done it in the league. So you go get one of those, maybe two of those in free agency, and you keep it pushing. So that's why you got to let the young boys play. Got to let them play. I'm with you, BD. Thank you for the super chat. Gear Cell 1, thank you for the super chat. Uh-oh. We about to get us some, we about to get a gem dropped on our melon at the end of this comment. Thank you for the super chat, Gear Cell 1. Gear Cell writes, solid coaching from head coach on down will make the line play much better this year. Just need Morgan Moses to stop wearing patent leather shoes with basketball shorts. Hey, what's wrong with patent leather shoes with basketball shorts, man? If you got on a crispy pair of birds, they're patent leather with some shorts, all right? I mean, now, it all depends on what kind of patent leather shoes you're talking about here, player. Because if you're talking about the same patent leathers I'm talking about, that's what we do in these parts, all right? Anyhow, you're right. You know, if we get better coaching all the way through, all right, it's going to improve the offensive line. It's going to improve. And look, if you listen to people around the league, I wasn't the biggest fan of old man Callahan, but he did some human-like work last year along the offensive line, man, and it was some good stuff. And so I don't know if the other coaches around the roster or the team was any good last year, but Callahan did definitely earn his keep a season ago. I had to offer up a double O to him because, remember, I was talking cold hard cash before the season. I said, look, if you're such a good offensive line coach, if you're one of the best, everyone's talking about how heralded you are, prove it. All right, prove it. Make this offensive line better. Take, what's his face? I can't remember his name to save my life tonight. Eric Flowers. All right, take Eric Flowers and make him good. And he did. He made him serviceable. And so hopefully we have an offensive line coach now that can take the parts that he's going to be given and get the most out of those guys. If he, in fact, is able to do that, I think we're going to have a very solid line. I don't know if it's going to be great, but it'll be serviceable enough to get the job done. And so that's what I'm hoping for. We will see what happens. But I'm betting on this offensive line not being as bad as some people want it to be and are making it out to be. That's my assumption for this thing, is that this offensive line not going to be nearly as bad as some people are making it out to be. But thank you for the advice, Gear Cell 1, and thank you for the super chat. Got another super chat. This one from Take That. Take That, Take That, Take That, Take That. Thank you for the super chat. Take That. Greatly appreciate you. Take That writes, I'm not afraid of NFC East edge rushers. Not sure if we play any elite guys this year. All right, so while I understand what you're saying, because, I mean, when you think of the NFC East, the first thing that comes to mind isn't edge rushers. All right, we don't have elite edge rushers in this division. I'd even say, what does come to mind in this division? I think the first thing that comes to mind when you talk about this division, if you're talking about a specific position, would probably be the running back position. I think we've got some quality running backs. Got Saquon in New York. You got Ezekiel Elliott in Dallas. And I really think that the young Penn State running back showed some stuff last year in Philadelphia. So I think you've got a really good mix of running backs in this division, and we have yet to enter our name into the ring yet. Everybody else has got them a quality back. Just about every team in this division feels like they've got a quality quarterback. I think the jury's still out on the Giants and their quarterback in Jones, but we still need to throw our name in the hat in terms of the running back position and in terms of the quarterback position. But you're right, we don't have many elite edge rushers. We got some elite defensive linemen. Tank Lawrence to me is a really good rusher. He destroyed us several times. He's destroyed us single-handedly. That Thanksgiving game a couple of years ago single-handedly took us apart. Excuse me. So he's a good ball player. Fletcher Cox is a stud. The Eagles have some guys up front along their defensive line, but none of them would be fear-inducing pass rushers per se. And so we might have the best. We think we have the best now of any team in the division in Chase Young and potentially Montez Sweat. And we'll see if those guys make a big-time tag team duo or not off the edge. But I understand where you're coming from. None of these guys really strike fear in your heart necessarily. And so I definitely understand where you're coming from. Take that. Greatly appreciate you. See if we have any more super chats. And that we do. So let's get to some more. Santiago Trudell, thank you for the super chat. Santiago Trudell, greatly appreciate you. Santiago writes, "What up, Lou? Much love to you, bruh. I felt great about Ron's take on Dewayne. Gave me confidence. What's your take on Ron's Zoom?" Talked about Ron's Zoom briefly, but I knew I was going to get questions on it tonight. And honestly, it was 32 minutes long, 33 minutes long or so. 25 of it was on, the social unrest and him addressing that. So I didn't really, that was cool. It needed to be done. He needed to speak on that. People wanted to know how he felt and what steps and measures were the Redskins going to take, and, were the Redskins going to push back on guys kneeling, and Adrian Peterson said he was going to kneel, all that stuff. He had to address that stuff. So that was fine. But, there were some moments where he talked football. One of the moments was when he talked about Dewayne and how, Dewayne has really impressed him, and Dewayne, texts him at night sometimes when he's going to bed, and so he doesn't see it till the next morning, but it shows his maturity. It shows how he's grasping things. Remember, Ron made it a point of emphasis when he first got here to say, I need Dwayne Haskins to step up and show leadership. I need him to be out on the forefront of everything. And Dewayne has took that a step further, and he's rallied the troops. He's taken his receivers out. He's thrown with those guys. He's been very vocal. He's gotten into the best shape of his life. He's done everything he's needed to do. He's communicating with the coaching staff. He's shown them his ability to soak everything up and be a sponge. Dewayne has went above and beyond the call of duty. That's what we wanted to see from him. I love it. Ron's said that he's been impressed. And so I love that. But to take it a step further, I was pleased with Ron's Zoom conference. He talked about all the positions. You know what I thought was really interesting is he went out of his way to say, we've got to find somewhere for Ryan Anderson to play. And I thought that was pretty telling because, one, that tells me they think very highly of Ryan Anderson. All right. But two, that also tells me they just don't know what the hell to do with him. All right. They probably see him, to me, I've said this before, Ryan Anderson. I said this when he was drafted, and I said, we drafted a guy that doesn't fit in our defense because he is a strong side linebacker. All right. He's not a 3-4 outside edge rusher. He's not an inside linebacker in a 3-4 defense. He is a 4-3 strong side backer. You put him over the tight end, you let him whoop his ass, and you let him be strong and stout in the run game. And every so often you turn him loose and you let him come after the quarterback. All right. And so I thought it was interesting that he went out of his way to say, we got to find somewhere for Ryan Anderson to play. He's a good football player. We got to figure something out for him. And this is Ryan Anderson's last year of his rookie deal. So in essence, they've got to figure out what he does best, get him to do that so that they can assess whether he's worth bringing back or not. So I found that very interesting that Ron said that and he went out of his way to make that statement. I also found it interesting that he talked about the young guys playing, and he made it a point of emphasis to say, look, we got a bunch of young guys. We don't want to stunt their growth. We could bring in veterans, but look, we don't even know what we have. We haven't had minis. We haven't had OTAs. We don't really know what we've got. And the only way to find out what you got is to let these young guys play. So I'm really, really intrigued by everything that Ron is saying right now, because a lot of it makes perfectly good sense. But in the same vein, a lot of it is still unknown, and he's pretty much echoing that. Like, we just don't know because we haven't had a chance to see these guys in person. But I've been really impressed with Ron Rivera, and I told you guys this on the Ron Rivera Zoom video that I did, and talking about how I'm constantly reminded, and sometimes I forget, but Ron constantly reminds us that, hey, I've been through this somewhat before. So this isn't my first rodeo when it comes to having a unique offseason. The last time we didn't have an offseason, I was a first-year head coach, so I kind of understand the dynamic. It doesn't make it any easier, but it does help me prepare for what's to come. So I feel a little bit better about that as well. So thank you for the super chat, Santiago Tradell. Really impressed with Ron Rivera to this point. Got a super chat from my man Protect Sports. Thank you for the super chat, Tones. Greatly appreciate it. He says, I'll take 7 wins, bro. Top 5 pick in 2021 is a no. We're not getting to the top 5 in the draft. We're not going to end up with a top 5 pick. I just don't see it happening. Again, I've told you guys this. Ron Rivera is good for at least 3 wins, in my estimation. A combination of Del Rio and Rivera are good for 3 wins. And that's adding to the 3 that we put up last year when we weren't any good and had a bunch of turmoil and turnover and coaching changes. We won 3 games with a roster that was among the worst in the league last season. However, we're much better, to me, roster-wise. We're much better in our mindset, and we're much better coached. There's no way we end up, in my mind at least, with a top 5 pick. In order to get a top 5 pick, you've got to win 4 or less games. We're not winning less than 5 games, guys. We're not. 5 is the absolute floor, all right? And you're not going to find a 5-win team more likely than not. You're not going to find a 5-win team in the top 5 of the draft. That's a top 10 pick with 5 wins. That'll get you, the 7th or the 10th pick in the draft, somewhere in there. But we're going to win 6 games at worst. At worst, we're going to win 6 games. The worst case scenario, worse, is 6 games. He says 7. So we're not going to be in the top 5. I just don't see it happening. Thank you for the super chat. Got another super chat. This one from Barry Williams. Thank you for the super chat, Barry Williams. Greatly appreciate you. Barry writes, coming into the show late, if Sadiq Charles isn't ready, between Cornelius Lucas or Jaron Christian, who do you think would start? All right, you know what? Perfect segue, all right, to talking about the tackle position tonight. So let's do that right now. Let's take that opportunity to talk about the tackle position tonight. And on the artwork, you get a chance to see all 6 of the current tackles on the Redskins roster. Now, there's been talk of the roster being trimmed potentially to 75 going into training camp because of COVID-19 and the impact of having all of these guys in one area. It's hard to house 90 players and not have them in close proximity with each other at all times. These facilities aren't big enough to have 90 guys and still keep social distancing principles. So The NFL is playing around with potentially forcing these clubs to cut their rosters to 75 players. If that happens, you'll see the trimming of some fat a little sooner rather than later. But the Redskins still have some roster spots available, if I'm not mistaken. So I don't think they filled out their entire 90-man roster. They still have a few more spots that they may be able to dedicate to, say, the tackle position. They may be able to bring in a couple of extra bodies or so. But right now, as it's constructed, these are the 6 guys. We'll run through them quickly. I'll give you a little bit of background on these guys, and do they even have a shot to make this football team? And if so, what will be their potential role? So we start with Paul Adams. This is a guy, a second-year guy in the league, went undrafted out of Missouri in the 2019 NFL draft, was picked up by the Giants, put on their practice squad, was ultimately cut, and now he's a Washington Redskin. So no NFL experience for Paul Adams. He's a long shot to make this football team, but just like everybody else that's on this roster, he has a chance because nobody is safe for the most part. So he'll get a chance to compete. But of the 6 guys in this room, he's got the longest shot to make the football team. And I'll take it a step further. More likely than not, you're keeping 4 tackles. That's the magic number every year for just about every team in the league. It's universal across the board. You keep 4 tackles, you keep 4 guards, and you keep 2 centers. Now, if you got some extremely versatile guards that can both play center and guard, then maybe you trim off one of your center spots and you keep 9 offensive linemen. But for the most part, 4 tackles, 4 guards. Maybe you feel good about 3 guards, but 4 guards, 4 tackles, 2 centers. Usually 10 offensive linemen. That's usually what teams do. 9, if you feel good about the versatility inside, you can trim off a little bit of fat. But normally 4 tackles is the going rate. So 4 of these 6 guys that we're talking about tonight going to be on this football team more likely than not. Then you get to Timon Paris. This is a guy that we've seen for the last 2 preseasons play. Haven't been overly impressed, but he hasn't been terrible either. There have been times when I've said to myself, Timon Paris can be a very competent backup in this league. All right, at times. But, Timon Paris isn't a guy that needs to make this football team. All right, in past years, if Timon Paris ended up on the team, I was fine with that because we didn't have enough talent to keep Timon Paris off the roster. I'm telling you that we shouldn't have a roster that has Timon Paris on it. But let me tell you this. The reason we put Paul Richardson Sr. on IR last year was because Timon Paris was about to be poached off of our practice squad by the Indianapolis Colts late in the season. And I get it. Late in the season, teams are struggling to put bodies on the field. You need guys to run practice. You need guys to even suit up on game day. And so the Colts came calling. They were going to take Timon Paris off of our plate. And the Redskins said, nope, he's ours. We've been developing him for the last 2 years. And so they put Paul Richardson on IR to make room for Timon Paris to elevate him to the active roster so that he would not be poached. So the Redskins, now again, that was the last regime, okay? Has nothing to do with the guys that we have now on the coaching staff. However, Timon Paris is a guy that's been with the organization the last 2 years. He's going to get a chance to compete. We'll see what happens. But again, he's on the outside looking in at this very moment. Now, you get to the guys that have the most realistic shot of cracking the 53-man roster. You start with Jaron Christian Sr. This is a guy that has been up and down throughout the first 3 years of his NFL career. Barely played in his rookie season, played a lot more in 2018. Season was ended prematurely due to injury. Then last year, he really didn't play at all. All right, and really last year, he was relegated to essentially spot duty. When a guy would get injured, he'd come in, but he's not a guy that has shown anything to this point that would lead you to believe that he can start for 16 games, whether you're just talking off of injury history. He hasn't been able to stay healthy when given an opportunity, and then because he got injured in 2017 in his rookie season. He got injured again in 2018 that ended his season when he was actually playing. And then in 2019, he really didn't get a chance. So we haven't seen anything from Jaron Christian Sr. I've told you all along, I don't trust him because he's got 2 first names. But outside of that, this is a guy that we drafted early on in the process. Remember, Trent Williams got pissed off because we drafted Jaron Christian. All right? This is a guy that if he has any hopes of being a Redskin moving forward, he needs to show it this year or he's gone. And I'm ready to move on from Jaron Christian. You're holding up a roster spot. If you can't get it done, if we can't see the signs of a guy that's taking those leaps and bounds this season, Jaron Christian needs to exit stage left, and we need to replace him. And I don't care if it's Paul Adams or Timon Paris. Honestly, at this point, I'm just tired of looking at Jaron Christian if he's not going to serve a purpose. All right, you spend a 3rd round pick on a tackle, and we spent it on him with the hopes that he would be a starter for us. We drafted him early because he was supposed to sit behind Trent and learn, sit behind Morgan Moses. And I think the impetus there was, hey, we're drafting you with the understanding that once Morgan Moses gets to a point where we think he's no longer giving us the best of what Morgan Moses has been able to provide for us over the years, and his play isn't adding up to his contract, you're going to take over at right tackle. That's what I think the thought process, because we didn't draft him to take over for Trent at left tackle. That wasn't the thought when they drafted him. The thought was, hey, we got a swing tackle, a guy at Louisville that played both the left and right side. And if Trent goes down with an injury, which he's prone to do, this guy can step in. If Morgan goes down, this guy can step in on both sides. He's comfortable. And it just hasn't manifested itself for whatever reason. So this is a make or break year for Jaron Christian. All right. Say what you want about him. This is a make or break year for him. Either he's on the roster and they feel confident putting him in the game if need be, or I don't think he makes the football team altogether. That could realistically happen in 2020. As you move on to the next guy, I think these final 3 guys are locks. Barring any kind of unforeseen circumstances, these guys are locks to make the football team. Now it's just a question of, do you start or don't you start? But the first guy is Cornelius Lucas. This is a guy that the Redskins went out of their way to sign in free agency. They felt good about signing Cornelius Lucas. Ron Rivera talked about him on the Zoom conference call about how, Cornelius is the guy that they signed. They're confident in his abilities. They brought him in here to compete, which they did. And he's going to get a chance at the left tackle position. He's been solid in his career. He started out with the Chicago Bears, probably played his best football with the Bears, then ended up in Detroit. I may have that backwards. I think I might have that backwards. I think he might have started his career in Detroit and then ended up in Chicago. Either way, Chicago, Detroit. He played in the NFC North his entire career to this point. Played some good football at times, but has been inconsistent. But there is talent there with Cornelius Lucas. As I mentioned, don't trust him. He's got 2 first names. However, he is a guy that in a pinch, if you need a guy to start, he's shown the ability to step in and give you some quality snaps. Do I think he is a tackle that can be your guy moving forward? No, I don't. But what I do think he is a very solid swing tackle. So in the event that Morgan Moses, which we know he's prone to do, gets injured and has to leave the game for 5 snaps, Cornelius Lucas comes in, there isn't a drop-off. All right, and we had this before. He's the equivalent of Ty and Seki. All right, a guy that you feel really confident that if either one of your tackles goes down, he can step in. Now, Ty and Seki was not good at right tackle. He was really good at left tackle. Cornelius Lucas can play both left and right equally well. So there isn't going to be that dramatic drop-off if he has to play on the right side versus the left side or vice versa. He's played solid football at both. And so worst case scenario, I feel like we've upgraded the swing tackle position if Cornelius Lucas isn't starting, which I don't want him to start. I think he's the perfect swing tackle, a guy that if your tackle's going to be out for 2 to 4 weeks, I got no problems whatsoever with Cornelius Lucas stepping in and manning up either the right or left tackle position for a month if need be. And so I feel like we've upgraded our swing tackle position because once Ty Nsekhe left, there was a void that was there. And I didn't have confidence in Jaron Christian. I can't speak for any of you out there. I didn't. So feel good about Cornelius Lucas. I don't think he's the answer at left tackle, however, but I do think he's a very good backup swing tackle, and I'm glad he's on our team. Then you get to our starters, potentially. And we'll start with Morgan Moses. He's locked in at right tackle, guys. I know for whatever reason you want to kill Morgan Moses. And look, I understand that he's been a penalty machine at times. I understand that he's been a source of frustration, at times with the false starts, the holding, and even getting hurt 7 times in one game. But that's showing his toughness. I don't kill him for that. You hurt your ankle, you go on the sidelines, you get it taped up, you come back in, somebody falls on your ankle again, you can't get up, you got to come off the field, you come back 3 plays later. That's toughness, guys. Shit happens, all right? I'm more frustrated with him for the false starts and the holding, but guess what? They don't happen every possession. They don't even happen every game. Now, the false starts happen. They just don't get called every game. But look, you got to cut Morgan Moses some slack. You guys have to ease up on him, all right? He's been really good for us. And if nothing else, he's been consistent for us, all right? Consistency is something that I think some of you guys out there take for granted. Some of you guys and gals out there, you take consistency for granted because it's not this pretty thing to behold. It's not aesthetically pleasing. It doesn't jump off the screen at you. No, Morgan Moses isn't a Pro Bowler. No, he's not an All-Pro. But you know what he is? He's a consistent 16-game starter in this league. That's hard to come by. Go look around the league at teams and find me teams that have had a guy start 16 games just about every year of their career like Morgan Moses has for us in Washington. He plays hurt. He plays hard. He does everything we ask him to do. All right? I like Morgan Moses, probably more than most of you out there. He is a credible, very good starter in this league. He has his faults, just like most of the right tackles in this league. All right, but when you're talking right tackles in this league, Morgan Moses is top half of the league. Not bottom half like a lot of you want to make him out to be. He is top half of the league at right tackle. Top half, okay? That means 16 and up, all right? Not 17 and back, which is what most of you project him as, okay? So we don't have a problem at right tackle. Could we upgrade that position? Maybe in the future. Look, we don't even know who our left tackle is. So you can't talk to me about upgrading a position when you don't even have one of your tackle positions even filled at the moment. Focus on that first before you start talking to me about upgrading another position. Can we at least have guys penciled in at both tackle positions before you talk to me about upgrading one of them? Okay? Morgan Moses is, write him in marker if you like. He's our right tackle. And then finally, of course, last but not least, you have our rookie, Sadiq Charles, okay? This is a guy that I'm excited about. The coaching staff, they sound excited about Sadiq Charles as well, but there's the unknown factor. This is a guy with a tremendous amount of talent. This is a guy that also had some hardships in college, went through some things, was suspended on multiple occasions. I don't think it was for anything really malicious, but, I've listened to some people talk about this guy, about him being a follower and not a leader, okay? I told you guys that when I broke him down. So that's also something on the Carfax report that you have to keep in the back of your mind. But all things aside, though, when you take the off-the-field stuff aside and you just focus on Sadiq Charles, the football player, there's a lot of things to like here. He's a guy that I think you can win with at the left tackle position. The question is, how fast does he get up to speed on the NFL game? Now, he did have the advantage of playing in the SEC, where you see the best of the best that college football has to offer. You generally see it in the SEC. Now, I would venture to say that the conference with the best pass rushers in 2019 was the Big Ten. I think they produced the most upper level pass rushers this past year, whether you're talking AJ Epineza, Chase Young, Yetur Gross-Matos. They had the most impactful and talented pass rushers. And the list goes on and on. Zach Bond at Wisconsin. The best pass rushers in the draft, to me, came out of the Big Ten when you take it as a whole. But you don't get breaks in the SEC, all right? And he went up against K'Lavon Chaisson in practice. So that counts for something. Bottom line is, how fast does he adjust to the speed of the game? How fast does he adjust to what they're asking him to do? All right? How fast does he acclimate himself to the NFL game? All right? The faster he can do that, and that's why a guy like Sadiq Charles is hurt and stunted by this offseason not being a full one, because he would have already have taken reps at left tackle. They would have already had tape on him in a Redskins uniform and him taking practice reps, showing him some of the mistakes that he made so that he can clean them up. He could have been working on those things right now. Instead, they don't have that. All they can talk about is some of the mistakes he may have made or some of the good things he may have made, have done at LSU. All they can talk about is, hey, this is what our offense looks like. This is what we did in Carolina last year. This is what our left tackle did in Carolina last year. This is what we want you to do moving forward. But again, it's all about muscle memory. It's all about repetitions. He hasn't been able to do that. So it's all about his learning curve. How can you speed that up? Because I think they want him to be our left tackle, not just this year starting the season off, but into the future. They, drafted him to be our left tackle of the future. And I'm hoping that he can step up and provide the confidence that is necessary in him to have him be the guy moving forward. But the talent is definitely there with Sadiq Charles. But as I mentioned with Jaron Christian and Cornelius Lucas, never, ever trust a man with two first names. So that's our tackle breakdown. It's a solid group, but it's not earth-shattering, you know? But at the end of the day, I feel really good about our top three tackles. I feel really good. And I think that if we start Sadiq Charles and Morgan Moses, I'll feel good about that. And knowing that Cornelius Lucas is backing those guys up, I'll feel good about that. All right? I'll feel good about that. All right. Let's get to some more super chats. And thank you for that segue, Barry Williams. Got another super chat here from Protect Sports. Double up. Thank you for doubling up, Tones. Greatly appreciate you. My man, Protect Sports, writes, I heard the podcast. I feel him, but it's big cap. I definitely get that. I definitely get that. But we're going to see. You can't, we don't know. You know, we don't know yet. And so it definitely is a wait and see approach this season. So we're going to have to see. That is for certain. Got another super chat. This one from Protect Sports as well. That's my man Tones tripling up. Greatly appreciate you, Tones. Thank you for the super chat. He writes, we have some questions, but Ron will answer them. That's the hope, you know. That same interview that I played you from Jason LaCamfora on the Kevin Sheehan Show podcast, he also talked about Ron Rivera as a coach, and he said, look, and he made some valid points. I tend to be a glass half full guy. So I'm going to see the positives in everything first before I start looking at the negatives. And with Ron Rivera, he said, look, he's never done this before. He said, look, Ron's never been in this position before. Ron Rivera is a guy that has had structure his entire career as a head coach. Someone's been above him, making the roster moves, calling the shots. And he's just been allowed to focus on the 53 guys in the locker room. And he's done a magnificent job of doing that. And he took it a step further and he said, look, Ron Rivera has been really good at fostering a defensive culture that allows defensive coordinators to get head coaching jobs. What he hasn't done, however, is had really good offensive coordinators. What he hasn't done is a really good job of calling the defense himself when pressed into duty. And so you're putting more on the plate of a guy that hasn't done well when more has been put on his plate in the past. So looking at this situation where I'm not saying he's the GM, because I think we all feel like we've had a guy doing an excellent job of picking players and getting them here. And, you know, we feel good about what he's been able to do. And so I don't think Ron has been tasked with finding players, but he's been tasked with overseeing the whole organization of this team. And that's usually what you have a team president for, or what you have, you know, a general manager for. And we just don't have that right now. And because of that, he's having to do a little bit more. There's a little bit more on his plate. He's not feeling it right now, obviously, because the players aren't back. And it's not a normal situation. But once they come back, that is interesting, you know. And that model hasn't worked here. And I told you guys as much with Mike Shanahan. Mike Shanahan had a lot of power and control. And it didn't work here. But it's a new day. It's a new coach. It's a new situation. And I think Ron ultimately will have the answers. I'm with you that, you know, we got a lot of questions, but the hope is Ron will have all of the answers. And so that's all we can hope for. Thank you for the super chat once again, Protect Sports. Got another super chat. This one from Ivan Salea. Once again, double up, Thank you for doubling up, Ivan. Greatly appreciate you. Ivan writes, if you could only choose one, A, fire Bruce Allen, B, hire Ron Rivera, C, draft Chase Young, D, Dwayne Haskins becomes all-pro or quarterback, or C, draft Chase Young. Okay. I'm guessing that you just meant those four, because the last option is draft Chase Young again. Anyhow, if I had one, I would choose A, because this organization couldn't succeed with Bruce Allen as its team president. There was no succeeding. I don't care if you got Chase Young. I don't care if you got 10 Chase Youngs. I don't care if Dwayne Haskins became an all-pro. With Bruce Allen here, you weren't going to attract good people here, because Bruce Allen was a magnet, or the opposite of whatever a magnet is. He was the opposite end of the magnet in terms of attracting good people here. Anybody that had any kind of good spirit or had good intentions here, Bruce got them out of here quick, fast, and in a hurry. Whether you're talking Scott McCloughan or you're talking about the marketing team that they brought in that he fired because he felt like they were getting too much credit. That's an easy question. Bruce Allen had to go, and nothing else mattered until he left. And so in what order I would take them is A, Bruce Allen. Then I would take D, Dwayne Haskins becomes an all-pro. Because if you'd like to have a great head coach, but if Dwayne Haskins becomes an all-pro, this team is going to be exponentially better. And you insert what coach you like. You got an all-pro quarterback, you're going to win football games in this league. Look at Deshaun Watson, for instance. Like, we all think that Bill O'Brien is doing his best to absolutely railroad that organization in Houston. I mean, if you want to tank an organization, he's doing it. Now, he may ultimately be doing everything right, and we just can't see it. And nobody knows his football team more than the guy that spends every moment with them. So maybe he's doing the right things. But it seems to me that he would have been fired a long time ago if he didn't have an all-world quarterback in Deshaun Watson. You know, winning cures all. You know what else cures a lot of things in this league? Man, you could have a very musty roster and a very musty coaching staff and a coach that stinks. But you know what cleans all of that shit up? A quarterback that's an all-pro. That's the deodorant. That's the cologne. That's the oil. That's the bath, if you will. You got an all-pro quarterback. You can overcome shortcomings elsewhere in your organization, on your roster. It's the reason why the Seahawks are good. I love Pete Carroll. I love their staff. I love their organization. Love the way they do things. Their roster isn't the most talented in this league. It's far from it. But you know what wins them games? Russell mother effing Wilson. And to think, we were one round away from him being a Washington Redskin. That shit's crazy to think about right now. But that's nor here nor there. If Dwayne Haskins becomes an all-pro, we win football games. So, to me, it'd be fire Bruce Allen above all else. That's a no-brainer. And then after that, the Dwayne Haskins becoming an all-pro would be the next thing that helps us win. All right. And then after that, it'd be, hire Ron Rivera and then Chase Young, drafting Chase Young. But the quarterbacks matter the most in this league. Getting Bruce Allen the hell out of here mattered above all else, above everything else. And you had to do that in order to have success. Got another super chat. This one from Big John 512. Thank you for the super chat, Big John. Greatly appreciate you. Big John writes, just showing some love, bro. Hey, I appreciate you, John. I really do, Big John, man. Thank you for the love. Greatly appreciate that, man. Thank you. Got another super chat from Protect Sports, my man Tones. Fourth super chat of the night. Appreciate you, Tones. Thank you so much. He writes, Steven Sims is underrated. JC Ice 2.0, big sleeper. Not a lot of people know about Steven Sims. Not a lot of people know because, again, if you're not watching Washington Redskins football very closely, we were a bad football team last year. There was, hell, at times, me being a fan, it was tough to watch, okay? There were some games last year where I wanted to check out. If it wasn't my favorite team, I wouldn't have watched. You know, the second half of that Patriots game, man, that was hard to watch. You know, and we know Jay was on borrowed time and he was a dead man walking, during the second half of that game, but that was a hard watch. Some of those games where we couldn't score a touchdown, those were hard watches, especially with Case Keenum in the game. Tough watches, man. Like, there was no value to those games, no nutritional value whatsoever in some of those games last year. But as you got towards the end of the season, you started to see guys like Steven Sims develop. You started to see guys like Kelvin Harmon come on. And that's what people that dismissed the Redskins because we were so bad, and rightfully so, that's what they missed out on. They didn't see Steven Sims evolving and emerging. And so, yeah, he's going to be underrated. But, if you're a Redskins fan or if you've been watching close enough, you know that this guy is very talented. And at any moment, he could explode. And so I'm excited to watch this guy continue to progress. And I think he could be one of those guys that sneaks up on some teams and is a big-time contributor in 2020 and potentially moving forward. Thank you for that super chat. See if we got any more super chats. Got another super chat right here. This one from my man JP. John Perez, tripling up. Thank you for the super chat, JP. Thank you so much. Greatly appreciate you, JP, who writes, the Gandhi Man is going to show out as a rookie. He says, just watch. Speaking of the NBA, my Lakers might play your Grizzlies in the first round. If they do, you and I are rivals until the series is over. I would love to get that experience. I just want my boys, even if we get swept, I just want them to experience playoff basketball because in the NBA, unlike any other sport out there, you have to have experience. You can't get by without it. Golden State had to take their lumps. They had to get in the playoffs, get beat up before they were actually able to win and overcome some of those demons. It's just a rite of passage in the NBA. And so I just want my young boys to get in. It's going to be tough. The NBA didn't make it easy on us. But that being said, I would love for them to get in. But it's going to be hard for the Gandhi man, Antonio Gandy-Golden, to really have an impact unless he's a quick study. Because of this offseason and him not getting the reps. It's crazy that you bring him up, though. I was watching a video of him training with Anquan Bolden. I love it, man, with an OG. And I think if I'm not mistaken, I retweeted that out, that video out. So if you follow me on Twitter, then you saw that video of him working with Anquan Bolden out in Arizona, I believe, and wherever Anquan is. And that's refreshing to see because Quan was one of the best route runners, one of the best receivers in the league. And to see the OG passing down the knowledge to AGG brings a smile to my face. And I'm hoping that he's able to get on the field sooner rather than later and really help this Washington Redskins football team and prove a lot of people wrong in the process as well. Got another super chat. Oscar Jose Montiel, thank you for the super chat, Oscar. Appreciate you. Oscar writes, hey man, keep it real. I like what you're saying. I'm glad you like what I'm saying. You must be new, Oscar. And if you are, thank you for showing up. Welcome. And hopefully you subscribe to the Louie T Network for more great content because there's a lot more where this came from. So thank you for the super chat and look forward to chopping it up with you in the very near future. See if we got any more super chats. See. We do have some more super chats. So let's get to some of those. All right. Next one is from my man Tylenol. Where you been at? All right, Tylenol. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you, Tylenol. Who writes, with Thaddeus Moss's ability as a blocker, do you think he would be much more valuable as an H-back or a fullback? No, not necessarily. I think they will move him around. You know, he might be playing that H-back, wing-back type of, formational chess piece. But when it's all said and done, you need those kind of guys to be in tight on the line in a traditional wide setup as a tight end. And, that's where you get the most value out of guys like that. So, as I've said, though, Ron Rivera, for every year of his career as a coach, has carried a fullback on the roster. The Redskins don't currently have one. However, in all of those years, you didn't have Scott Turner as your offensive coordinator. So I don't know what his philosophy is in terms of a fullback. Does he think that a fullback is necessary? Maybe he does, maybe he doesn't. Because if you've listened to Scott Turner this offseason, he's going to have tremendous influence on this offense and how it looks, how it's run, and how guys perform, and who's getting snaps, who's not. That's all going to be determined by Scott Turner, seems like. So Ron Rivera is a defensive guy. He's going to move out of the way and let Scott Turner do what it is he does on the offensive side of football. So it'll be interesting to see what the Redskins do at fullback, if they carry a fullback or if they use one of their tight ends to double as a fullback. But Thaddeus Moss is very intriguing because he may be the best blocker we have on the roster at the tight end position already, which is a sad state of affairs when you think about it, because he's a young guy coming into the mix and he wasn't known necessarily for his blocking at LSU, yet he may ultimately be the best we have to offer on the team already. But thank you for the super chat, Tylenol. We'll see what happens with him. Got another super chat. This one is from King of the North. My man, King of the North, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you, King of the North, who writes, I have a gut feeling Charles or Christian is not the answer at left tackle. I still think the starter at left tackle this year is not on the roster. Gotta protect DH. You might be right. Rivera said he's not. Okay, so what he said was he wants to find out what he has first. But that doesn't mean he's opposed to bringing a guy from the outside in. All right. But what he's essentially said is we got to find out what we've got. And we don't know because we haven't had a chance to see these guys. And I made this statement on the Ron Rivera video. And I said as much. Look, Ron didn't say he wasn't bringing a guy in. It's less likely that he's bringing a guy in because of the condensed amount of time that the Redskins will have to get prepared for the season. But what he did say was, look, if we get to camp and we realize that these guys can't do it, we don't have a starting left tackle on the roster, then they'll probably make a move. They'll probably make a move sooner rather than later, because you got to act fast if you want to get anybody that's credible enough to start. So it'll probably be very quick that they'll make a determination on whether they've got a guy or not that they feel confident can get the job done. And so I think we're going to find out probably by the end of that first preseason. And you know what? Depending on how long training camp is, let's say training camp's 2 weeks. If training camp's 2 weeks, by the end of that first week, if they're not satisfied with what they've seen at left tackle, you'll probably see a move be made. So you might be right. The guy that starts at left tackle may not be on the roster right now. My money's still on Sadiq Charles. It is. And if it's not Sadiq Charles, then my money's on Cornelius Lucas. I think before they go out and explore, they're going to exhaust every option on the current roster before they go out and make a move. But as you've mentioned, the left tackle position is monumental. And Dewayne Haskins' safety is paramount. And because of that, I think they're going to take the position very seriously and maybe act a lot quickly or quicker than they would normally if they had a true off season. So we'll see. Thank you for the super chat, King of the North. Got another super chat here from King of the North. Greatly appreciated, King of the North. Doubling up, double up, Thank you for doubling up, King of the North, who writes, DH was on pace for a 60-sack season last year. How many were his fault? Does he take over under 50 sacks this year? I'd say some of those were on him. And some of those were immediate pressures. There isn't anything he could have done about it. All right, but some of those were his fault, not setting the protections correctly. And remember, some of those sacks that he took were early on when he had no idea, deer in headlights, had no idea what was going on. I'd venture to say that in between the Minnesota game and the Giants game, he probably got sacked every bit of 5 or 6 times between those two games. And those weren't full performances. All right. You're talking about essentially a full game worth of experience for him, because I think it was a little over a half versus the Giants and a half versus the Vikings. So I just think that whatever the case may be, he's a lot more comfortable. And Dewayne, they talked to Dwayne Haskins on a Zoom conference the same day they talked to Ron Rivera, which was on Wednesday. And Dewayne talked about how the verbiage in this offense is so much easier to digest. It's a number system, so it's not as many words. It's not as wordy as the West Coast offense that Jay Gruden had in here, where you're tagging everything and it's so much to spit out. He's like, I'm so much more comfortable. And he said the beauty of me learning that offense last year is that I see now that really everything in the league is the same, which it is. It's just different verbiage. It's a different language from coordinator to coordinator. One guy calls it this, another guy calls it that. And so I'm much more comfortable with the concepts and everything that we're doing right now, because I saw a lot of these things last year. It's just a different name. So I'm in a much better spot. I feel a lot more comfortable. I feel like I can get us in and out of the huddle faster. I feel like I can get to the line of scrimmage quicker to set protections. And so Dwayne's in a really good spot right now. And I think what you're seeing is a guy that's going to be able to protect himself a lot better. And I'll take it a step further. Some of that weight that he's losing is in an effort to be a little bit more spry in the pocket so that if there's immediate pressure, he can escape and maybe make something happen and turn what would have been a 7-yard sack last year into a 2-yard gain or a 1-yard gain, which isn't a sack and isn't going backwards. So I think Dewayne is going to be much better off this year than he was last year. And I think you're going to see that sack total come down. Now, obviously, that depends on who are the 5 guys in front of him and are they doing their jobs adequately enough. But having more mobility definitely helps Dewayne, and having a better understanding and grasp of the offense also is going to minimize the amount of sacks and hits that he takes as well. Got another super chat. This one from Gear Cell 1. Double up. Thank you for doubling up, Gear Cell 1. Greatly appreciate you. My man Gear Cell 1 writes, great show, Louie. Keep it strong. Saw Jay Gruden on ESPN wearing an Orioles jersey with lavender dress slacks. Tragic. Now that is a fashion faux pas, or as Jay would call it, a foobar. Okay? Jay Gruden looks like a guy that would do something like that. But I appreciate you, Gear Cell, and I thank you for doubling up on the super chat. Let's see if we got any more super chats. So we got no more super chats. We've been at it for 2 hours, so more likely than not, this is where we'll cut it off and stop the show. Really appreciate you guys coming out, joining me tonight. Great show. Looking forward to chopping it up with you guys in the future. Make sure you're checking out the Louie T Network podcast. As I've mentioned, make sure that you like this video. Subscribe to the Louie T Network if you haven't already done so. Also, make sure that you turn on that notification bell if you haven't already done so you don't miss a thing. All right? Follow me on the socials. On Twitter, at Louie T Network. On IG, Louie T Network _. So make sure you're following me on those platforms to stay abreast of what's going on. Remember, I am a Redskins fan, etched in burgundy and gold. My Redskin spirit will never die. Redskin spirit will never fold. Until we meet again, hail to our beloved Washington Redskins. We will reconvene sooner rather than later. I'm still breaking down some of the Zoom conferences of some of the other guys that spoke, like Terry McLaurin, who spoke today. If I get any nuggets out of there that I feel are show worthy, I'll pop in with a new video for you guys and get your reaction to that. But at the end of the day, we will reconvene sooner rather than later. And so I thank you guys for joining me. You guys stay safe out there. Take care of yourselves. And we'll see each other next time. Thank you for all the super chats, all the support. Take care.